The worst NBA trades in the last 10 years. Year after year, deadline after deadline, fans and journalists around the world love to label trades as fair, unfair, a beatdown, or an underrated trade. Whatever the case may be, we really never know how good or bad a trade is until we give it a couple years to play out. In the last 10 years, we've seen plenty of disturbing trades that have sent teams back for years after making bad decisions and putting together wrong ideas. Keep watching to see the worst NBA trades in the last 10 years that have changed the NBA's past, present, and future today. 2011, Clippers trade unprotected pick, which becomes Kyrie Irving. The Clippers were 16 games under 500 at the trade deadline and decided to trade for 28-year-old Mo Williams and 30-year-old Jamario Moon in exchange for an unprotected first-round pick. The unprotected first-round pick became Kyrie Irving. Although Los Angeles finished with the NBA's 7th worst record, the ping-pong balls bounced the right way for Cleveland, where they got the first overall selection. The Cavs took Irving and he won Rookie of the Year honors in 2011-2012 and propelled Cleveland to their first NBA title after drilling the game-winning shot in the 2016 NBA Finals. Instead of Kyrie, the Clippers ended up trading for Chris Paul in the middle of the next season, but they could have used a guy like Kyrie instead. This was the trade deadline where stars like Deron Williams and Carmelo Anthony were available and switched teams. The LA Clippers ended up basically gifting the Cleveland Cavaliers star point guard Kyrie Irving, just so the team could clear salary cap space. It turns out though that they ended up doing almost nothing with that extra cap space anyway. Look, at 21-37 entering the All-Star break, the Clippers needed to do something. With Blake Griffin being the young centerpiece of the team, the Clippers needed to add something around him so they could compete. The rest of the roster was a bunch of young players who had plenty of potential but just never lived up to the hype. Take Al-Farouq Amino for example. He was the 8th pick for the Clippers in the 2010 NBA draft and was a big part of the Clippers' future plans. Eric Bledsoe was taken 18th in the same season, and it took time for him to adapt to the NBA. The Clippers were relying on shooting guard Eric Gordon, who averaged 22.3 points in his 3rd season in the league that year, along with veteran center Chris Kaman, who made his first and only All-Star game that season, averaging 18.5 points and 9.3 rebounds per game. DeAndre Jordan had plenty of potential coming off the bench as Kaman's backup. The Clippers didn't know what they had, but they knew that with Blake Griffin on the team, they needed to shake things up. Before the 2008-2009 season, the Clippers signed Baron Davis to a 5-year, $65 million contract. For a top point guard in the league, that doesn't seem like such a bad deal. When Davis was traded, his performance declined. The Clippers realized that they needed to get young again and trade Davis away. Because the Cavs lost LeBron James to the Miami Heat, they were struggling to find answers themselves. But the Cavs saw that they could add an unprotected first-round pick if they took on Davis's contract, and ran with it. The final trade was Jamario Moon and Mo Williams from the Cavs for Baron Davis and the Clippers' unprotected 2011 first-round pick. Sure, at the time, it seems like it was a win for both teams. The Clippers added an all-star point guard and cut salary, while the Cavs brought in a first-round pick to rebuild with. The Clippers ended up using that cap space to sign borderline players such as Randy Foye and Ryan Gomes. The Clippers still missed the playoffs, and the Cavs got a lottery pick that would become a first overall pick. The Cavs won the 1st and 4th overall selections, drafted Kyrie Irving and Tristan Thompson, and won the NBA championship 4 years later. The Clippers never won a title like Kyrie Irving did, but they did put together some favorable years with Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and brought in Chris Paul. The Clippers' pre-All-Star break record was one of the worst in the NBA, yet they still believed that they would get to the playoffs when making this deal. They traded this Kyrie Irving pick to get rid of Baron Davis's contract. It's so fascinating. Imagine what Kyrie and Blake could have done in their prime together. DeAndre Jordan and Kyrie Irving are currently playing together in Brooklyn and seem to get along real well. Could this team have dominated the West for years to come? 2012, Nets gift the Blazers Damian Lillard. The Nets made some real poor decisions in 2012 and 2013 that set the franchise back for a long time. Obviously, everyone knows how bad the 2013 Nets trade with the Celtics turned out. You know, the time where Kevin Garnett came to Brooklyn only to be with washed-up veterans. But this is the forgotten trade that will haunt the Nets unless Kyrie and Durant can fix the mess in Brooklyn. The great Billy King made a deal in 2012 with the Blazers, where the Nets brought in Gerald Wallace and swapped a slightly protected draft pick that turned into one of the best players in today's game, in Damian Lillard. Lillard would end up winning Rookie of the Year, and Wallace was an aging veteran that never did anything good for the Nets. Ben Falk, the basketball analytics manager with the Blazers, talked about how the deal went down, and how the Blazers knew they were catching King off guard. Falk started his narrative by discussing that he had talked with the Blazers' assistant general manager the morning of the day before the deadline, in March 2012. The deadline was later that year because of the lockout. Anyway, he says, "We were sitting in one of the offices in the Trailblazers practice facility, a whiteboard on one wall filled with magnets showing the rosters and salaries of each team, spitballing various ideas and talking about past trades that have been made, good and bad. You know," I said to the assistant general manager, I feel like every now and then, there's a team that gets lucky at the deadline. It's not that they did anything special. They had the right player at the right time, and the right team calls them, and it's a home run. I shook my head. Why can't, just once, that be us? He laughed. Maybe, you never know. Later, he would realize that the Blazers got lucky. The New Jersey Nets had lost out on the Dwight Howard sweepstakes, and needed to make a move to make their team and fans happy with their attempted progress. The Nets really thought Howard would be coming to New Jersey. Williams was going to be a free agent, and the Nets wanted to make a splash to keep him around. The Howard strategy wasn't going to work out, so they went to the drawing board. The Blazers kept an eye on the situation throughout. The Magic wanted more than just draft picks, even though the Nets were offering 3. Orlando wanted players. So King offered to Orlando in 2011 a 3-team affair that had the Nets send 3 unprotected first-round picks in 2011, 2013, and 2015 to Portland for Gerald Wallace, who would have been packaged along with Brook Lopez and 2 other Nets picks, their own in 2017, and the Rockets' 2011 pick for Howard, Hedo Turkoglu, and Chris Duhon. The Magic rejected it, and the Nets went back to panic mode. The Blazers still believed that the Nets had some interest in Wallace, and the Blazers wanted to start rebuilding. They were hoping to use the veteran assets like Wallace to add draft picks. Falk went in teardown mode. Portland called King, and the first phone call was quick and easy. King was intrigued with Wallace, and the Blazers wanted to get rid of him. Once King talked it over with his staff, he immediately called Portland back. So they're definitely interested in Gerald, King said. It sounds like he's a player Darren Williams wants to play with, and they think they will convince Darren to re-sign this offseason. They're offering their first rounder in this upcoming draft for him. The Nets didn't like too many players in the NBA draft in 2012. They believed Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and Thomas Robinson were going to be the 3 can't-miss prospects. The entire Blazers staff was stunned that King was willing to part with a slightly protected first-round pick for a washed-up player like Gerald Wallace. What are they talking about for protection? One of the Blazers executives asked. We'll have to go back to talk to them about it, Chad said, but it sounds like it's not going to be too strong. Falk wrote, my heart hit the gas pedal. I learned very quickly after I stopped working for the Blazers that just because a trade is discussed doesn't mean it's likely to happen. There are countless ways a deal can die on the vine, but that doesn't stop the excitement. This was the exact scenario I had wished for only the day before, and now, suddenly, it was real. We had the right player at the right time, and were called by the right team. The Nets were willing to send them a first-round draft pick with just the first 3 picks being protected. Negotiations presented the Blazers with a dilemma, Falk recounted. The Blazers knew they had King where they wanted him, but didn't know how hard they should push. Of course, the Nets agreed to top 3 protection only. The Nets were confident that they had done well. They would protect their top 3 picks and bring in Gerald Wallace, who would then be able to convince Darren Williams to come back. The lottery pick landed as the number 6 pick in the NBA draft, where the Blazers selected Lillard. He's already a multi-time All-Star and has helped the Blazers compete in the playoffs along with CJ McCollum. The funny thing in all this is that King actually doubled down on his mistake. He then gave Wallace a 4-year, fully guaranteed $40 million contract. More mistakes happened the following season. In order to make the numbers work, Wallace had to be included in the deal with the Celtics that included Kevin Garnett and Jason Terry. Celtics general manager Danny Ainge was willing to take on Wallace's contract, but he wanted to add to the cache of unprotected draft picks. The Nets fell for every trap in 2011 and 2013, and soon, in 2021, the Nets might finally get back to competing. The Nets panicked and made some terrible decisions just to hold on to Darren Williams, who was underachieving during his time with the Nets. Imagine Lillard in Brooklyn, though. 2012. Thunder duck luxury tax, ship Harden to Rockets. The date was October 27, 2012. ESPN sent out a report that read that the Thunder had traded James Harden to the Houston Rockets for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and some future picks. The Thunder traded the reigning Sixth Man of the Year, who still had a year left on his rookie contract just days before the season opener. Remember, Harden was just 23 at the time. The Thunder were coming off a rough NBA Finals, but the team the Thunder had built could have been legendary had they all stayed together. The complete trade was that the Rockets received Harden, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward, while the Thunder received Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, a 2013 first-round pick that became Steven Adams, a 2013 second-round pick that became Alex Abrinas, and a 2014 first-round pick that became Mitch McGary. At face value, this trade has become a nightmare for the Thunder. Of course, it just keeps getting worse for Oklahoma City. Harden has become one of the league's best and brightest stars in the NBA. He has put together multiple triple-doubles and can score at will with a nasty step-back jumper. Harden has been to 8 All-Star games and has an MVP to his name from 2018. He's led the Rockets to 2 Western Conference Finals appearances, without Durant and Westbrook's help. Seriously, what would have happened if the Oklahoma City Thunder kept Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden together? Would the Thunder be the dynasty that the Warriors were? Sports journalist Bill Simmons discussed many hypothetical scenarios that could have changed Harden's career. I believe, what if Oklahoma City kept Durant, Russ, and Harden together? Is the biggest NBA what if of all time, Simmons said. Known now as the Harden trade, it swung at least 4 titles and at least 3 MVP awards. How would our hypothetical great-great-grandkids comprehend that trade? 3 future MVPs made the 2012 finals. All 23 years and under, they never played together again. And it happened because Oklahoma City wanted to avoid the luxury tax. Simmons continued to explain how he predicted in 2012 that the Thunder would trade Harden. He continued to use the word worst for Oklahoma City, as it was the worst possible trade for the team. Simmons also explained how good Harden had been for the Houston Rockets as soon as he arrived, although Harden struggled to beat the Warriors in 4 series in the playoffs. Imagine if Westbrook and Durant teamed up with Harden in Oklahoma City during their prime. History would be different. The Thunder really could have been just like Golden State. The Warriors drafted Draymond Green, Stephen Curry, and Klay Thompson, and started an incredible dynasty. Of course, Westbrook has now teamed up with Harden in Houston, but they're unlikely to win a title due to the Rockets' game planning and unorthodox roster. Time will tell.